my channel. My name is Isabel and today we're going to be talking about The School for Good Mothers by Jessamine Chan. So The School for Good Mothers is a dystopian novel surrounding the question, what is it to be a good mom, and can this be modeled? Can this be taught in a controlled environment? Can this be something that you reform women? And with these ideas in mind, we have a novel that presents the idea of an institution, of a government program for women who had their children removed from their care. Our main character, Frieda, had a really bad day and she had her child, Harriet, removed from her care, an 18-month-old baby, if I remember correctly. And after that, it's like a snowball effect. Everything that she does to try to prove to the authorities that she is capable of taking care of her daughter backfires. And that's what is really interesting and poignant about this book. It sets how the system of oppression, the system of this hyper surveillance, of this measurement of something like motherhood, makes people incapable of escaping that negative view of them. I hope you're thinking about incarceration, which I feel like it's what comes to mind. How the majority of people who are incarcerated tend to be from poor backgrounds, tend to be from racial minorities, and they are born into a position that pulls them into a life of crime due of necessity or of violence, and to break those circles of poverty and violence is almost impossible. Taking this idea, we go to the School for Good Mothers and we apply that for women and for motherhood. Now, I've seen some reviews, or even the cover of the book, it refers to The Handmaid's Tale and it talks about body autonomy, which, sure, I think that is, in my perspective, I feel like it's a bit lazy to compare books and say, oh, if you like this, you might like this, because what you like about The Handmaid's Tale might not be what you like or what you find in this book. Especially because, yeah, sure, they're both dystopian. Dystopian novels tend to be about surveillance and power, and this particularly is about women and motherhood. But I think that The School for Good Mothers is something entirely different. I would say the writing style, the idea proposed, it doesn't take easy path. It doesn't cut corners to be a retelling of The Handmaid's Tale. It doesn't try to be the next Handmaid's Tale. So I would say proceed with caution, but if you are going to read this, you do need to know that this is a dystopian, because again, in other reviews I've seen, oh, this is too far-fetched. Sure, it's not about reality, but it is, because as I said, it embeds those ideas that we already have and those problems that we already fighting, and that it just exaggerates it. It's like extrapolates them, and it makes you question a lot of things, even if you're not a mother, as I am not. And maybe even especially if you're a bit hesitant about motherhood, if you are on the younger side, on the first years of motherhood, and a lot of the feedback that you find about the topic is that motherhood is amazing. There's nothing more rewarding than that. That's all that you should want to be. Mom is what you should be, instead of all the other elements of your identity. So I would like to talk about that now. If you don't want any spoilers, maybe do not proceed. As I said already, the basic plot is that there is an institution for women whose children have been removed by Child Protective Services, and they go to this one-year program when they are being observed and watched and how they perform, and they are given a doll. But this doll is a super technological one that is supposed to be as close to a human child as possible. They cry, they need their diapers changed, they talk, they move, they interact with each other, but they also collect data. They are hyper-realistic dolls that they're supposed to be a tool for the mom to learn how to mother, but they're also this constant observation and data collection. Now I might talk a bit more in detail about the novel, and if that's not your cup of tea, you're welcome to exit the video. Thanks. See you next time. Now, what do I mean when I say let's talk about identity in relationship to motherhood? The program in the novel, The School for Good Mothers, makes a point to show that in order to be a mom, you cannot be a woman. You cannot be anything else. You cannot be a daughter. You cannot even be a wife. It has to be 100% motherhood. And that's why a lot of women are going to fail, because a lot of women will not sacrifice all these other facets of the self. This is important because as a social criticism, for us to achieve perfection, it would mean for us to leave humanity or leave individuality to a point where we are following perfection and teaching a human how to be human while us stopping that part that makes us individuals. I don't want to give specific details, but for example, what comes into Frieda, our main character, is often her mental health, her sexual and romantic desires for connection, for touch, for feeling. It could be also career ambition, it could be friendships, like everything else has to be put to the side. Who she is as a person has to be put to the side. And also what her body physically needs, rest, boredom, a change of airs, all of that interferes with the mission of being a good mother and what a good mother is. That's why I started this video by saying, what is a good mother? Can you teach a bad mom how to be a good mom? What is the measurement that we're going to use for that? Because we all, even if you don't admit it, we all unconsciously or consciously judge others, specifically through social media. And that's something that comes in the video and that is something that comes in the novel as well. The women that are in the program have offenses that some of us could say, hey, that's not that bad. And other things that we would say, that's absolutely, completely horrible. You shouldn't have a child in your care. And for that, I mean people who physically, emotionally, and sexually abuse their children, to people that complained about their kids in social media. And just think about your TikTok feed, your Twitter, your Instagram. How many parents that you know or don't know complain about their kids? How many parents take pictures of their kids? How many expose their kids to social media and to the world in very problematic ways? Then we're thinking, okay, it's not only it's not only our traditional views of abuse that is being punished. And when we think about surveillance and punishment, then we have to think of who is designing this and who are the ones being targeted. Because even though we have a dystopia society with super technology, and the idea of this program is not bad, is under the idea and the value of protecting children. But then we take another step, we look at it into a different perspective, and the ones that are being punished, of course, like in the penitentiary system, are those of racial minorities that come from poverty, that are within a system, within a circle of violence, within a circle of being targeted. And then this utopian program, this program that seemed to be the answer, it just turns out to be yet another product of oppression, another tool of oppression even. I haven't mentioned it yet, but Frieda is Chinese, from Chinese immigrant parents, that within her own identity, she feels like she hasn't achieved what she was supposed to do, like that her parents gave her everything and she didn't reach the full potential, and that on its own is a struggle. But then she also is not teaching her kid Chinese, and that is something that is reflected badly on her. But just her own way of expressing feeling, it's also viewed as negative. And that is what makes it interesting for a conversation about race and cultural practices and ethnicity, because while I am not Chinese and I cannot speak of how Chinese people raise their children, there are these stereotypes, and what is said in the book is that her reactions are cold, that she doesn't engage with the child enough, that she doesn't talk to the kid enough, that she doesn't hug properly, that she's not having the voice, the tone, the approach that is necessary. And a lot of this are different cultural practices. And from my case, I can tell you that while Mexican parenting style is not seen as cold per se, it is seen as highly violent. And we could talk on a different moment and how violence sadly is intrinsic into Latin American parenting styles, because it comes largely from a post-colonial take on, you know, master and servant and slave and master and all of these different power dynamics that were preserved with a lot of violence. But that's for a different video. So race becomes an important part of the self that the program is trying to erase, or at least the cultural practices that come with being from a certain race or ethnicity are being punished. So if you act in this way, you are punished, and then you don't get to see your child. So you prefer to go with the sanitized, fits all types of parenting that is being taught at this school. And that also makes me think of how this character, Frieda, she's not only dealing with her own cultural and racial identity and how to teach it to her baby, but she's also dealing with the emotional devastation of her marriage failing. Her baby is 18 months and her husband already has another partner. I don't remember clearly right now, but he basically left her when she was pregnant. And the way that the novel is constructed is that it's very difficult to make a judgment on the characters or what is happening. Because while, yes, of course, Gus left her when she was pregnant, dealing with mental health issues, and after she had to uproot her life because of his job and all of the things about their relationship, she cannot hold a grudge against him. It is seen negative of her that she's still feeling negative about him, because it is in the best interest of them and of the child for them to co-parent and for them to get along. But where does her feelings as a woman, as a partner, as a grieving person comes to? She's seen as a problem because she doesn't want Gus' new partner, Susanna, to be close to her child, because she still feels terrible, because she still feels like that the idea of the family that she wanted to build was wrecked, and now they look like the perfect family. They look like the epitome of domesticity. And when we compare these two female characters, that Susanna is not in a lot of the novel, but if you do compare them, Susanna is everything that Frieda should or would want to be, including that she is younger, she is white, she seems to have motherhood and domestic affairs come natural to her, and she posts the kid on Instagram and she is acting like this, she is part of the co-parenting cosmos, and she is, but not because Frieda has come to terms to it yet. Everything comes too fast, her mental health issues as well, but you can never say, oh, she didn't do anything wrong, because she did. Her offense is a true offense. She left her baby unattended for a long period of time. And what I like about it is that we don't have an innocent character. It's not, oh, poor her, she didn't deserve this, this is a mistake. But at the same time, you have this empathy for her instantly because you know what is going on with her. And that makes you question, well, why do I have sympathy for this woman, but I don't have sympathy for the other one? And then a lot of things come to play. Well, maybe because as a Chinese educated middle class woman, she seems more approachable and more innocent to her eyes than maybe a brown poor woman. Why? Why if it's the same offense? And while you read more, you come to question more. That's what I like about the books that I choose to read or that I gravitate towards, is that are books that unsettle me. That's what I really appreciate in a book. A book that makes me think and makes me question things. And that is where this book shines. I think that the writing style as well is a bit dry. But I think that's a conscious decision. I don't know, because this is the first novel from Jessamine Chan, as far as I know. And I don't have anything to compare it with. I don't know if this is her voice or this is the voice that she chose for this novel, for this character. Because it seems like if this is the voice from Frida, we are getting this coldness. We are getting this detachment that people are observing in her. So it might be that we need to read against that. We need to confront that and see, okay, maybe the writing style is a bit detached, is a bit cold at times. But that doesn't mean that that's who she is. It means that this is how she's communicating these ideas. I don't know if I'm explaining that correctly, but I think that if you're looking maybe for very adorned prose and stuff like that, this is not what you find. I don't know if this is Jessamine Chan's voice or this is the conscious decision, the voice that she is employing for Frida's story. Lastly, I want to talk a little bit about surveillance and technology. So we are in the AI virtual reality time, and when we think about technologies being used for evil or nefarious purposes, we think about war, we think about genocide, we think about the end of the world, the rise of the machines, stuff like that, which of course, I'm one of them. I am a bookish person. I am not a tech person, which is something that makes me very anxious about all of these new discoveries and new technologies. And I don't know, maybe a tad paranoid sometimes. But this is not a new thing. This is not even stuff out of science fiction, which of course science fiction was what gave us like the 3 laws of robotics, like Asimov's laws of how robots can have an ethical, moral code, and how people who develop these technologies must have this in mind. But in the School for Good Mothers, the idea of surveillance is through rehabilitation, not through punishment. And that takes us to Michel Foucault. And this is not a lecture, so I'm not going to give you all of that. But in his book, Discipline and Punishment, he studied the prison system and how the power dynamics shifts in there with the so-called panopticon, the idea of, are we really rehabilitating people if they know that they're being watched the whole time? Do they really internalize the ethics, codes, or laws? And do they believe in them? Or is it because they are known to be observed all the time? And if they are known that they're being observed, then the change is not real, then they shouldn't be allowed to leave. And that brings, those ideas really bring me back to the book, because since the moment Frida gets her child taken from her, I think there is no way that she can get her back. As I said before, the racial and ethnical biases are embedded into the system. These ideas of her not being able to escape are already in place. And that's what I kept bringing, poverty and violence, because similarly to those cycles, once you are targeted and read as a threat, it is very improbable that you will be able to escape that. Another dimension of that is that we become judges. We become informants, but we also become the ones that enforce the rules, the ones that, if I am your friend, I'm also judging you on your parenting style. And I could also call on Child Protective Services for you, or whoever that posted that thing in Instagram and complaining about their children, and they don't even know who was the one that reported them, because then it turns into surveillance into every aspect of our life, and like into the private home. Once the Child Protective Services takes Harriet, they install cameras to see how Frieda reacts, what her daily routine is, how clean she is, how active, how happy, everything. She cannot talk to her friends or her family because whatever she says to them might be put on a negative light, because she's going to complain, because she is going to say that she was innocent, because she cries or she doesn't cry, because etc. Thinking also about surveillance and technology, we need to question, what is the goal? The goal for the School for Good Mothers is to only have children in the protection of good mothers. But wouldn't everyone have to undergo the program before they had children? Because then it is a type of punishment, a sting on those that failed. But then it also reinforces the idea that there are certain mothers who don't need the school because they are naturally good moms. So what the school is trying to do is turn these bad moms into naturally good moms, but it is artificial because of the program. So what is the point? If the point is that the best mom is that naturally knows how to do all of these things, then the program on its own is flawed because it's artificial. Because are these women being threatened that they're never going to see their children again, and they're this program instead of being in jail, or some of them, and not because they want to improve or because they know that they're bad. Someone told them that they were bad and that they needed to go to this program. Then the foundation of the whole thing is flawed. But again, if we think of technology, we think of specific goals, we think of efficientness, and we think of how to make your life simpler, but this is not it. And when I think about the dolls in the novel, it's very interesting because, again, I go back to the rules of robotics, of a robot must know that they're a robot, for example, and that they cannot do any harm, and that they need to listen to their human, whatever. Do these dolls know that they're not children? Why do they have these reactions? They do get attached to their mom, or the idea of who their mom is. And that is not fully explored. We're not in the robot's mind, but it does talk about that idea of getting attached to a doll, because we see that other moms, because of the trauma of being separated from their children, they do tend to see the dolls as a replacement for them. And this is not something new. A lot of people who experience miscarriages or infertility issues, it's been known that they buy dolls, or they buy a replacement in the form of a pet or an inanimate object who they pour their love into. And that is their own process, but this is something that is forced into these women that experience the trauma of separation, and then telling them that they must do this perfect task with this doll that is giving them the comfort of a child, but it's also reminding them that they're not with their actual child. And it's also assessing them, or not even, because the robot doesn't assess them. The robot just gathers the information, and then the experts analyze how good of a mom you are. So it's very obvious this book made me think a lot. I hope it inspires you to read it, or at least to think about these complex issues. You don't have to read the book to think about motherhood, to think about surveillance, to think about racial biases embedded into systems of oppression. That's probably your daily life as well as it is mine. But I do recommend this book. I think that it's really good. It's a good read. It's entertaining and it sucks you in. I think there's going to be a TV adaptation, if I'm not mistaken. The rights of the book were already sold, so it's just a matter of time for it to come. And I think it also comes in a very pertinent era, time, however you want to call it, of motherhood, social media, technology, body autonomy. It feels very contemporary, very pertinent to our times. And if you want to read some of the other things I mentioned, Michel Foucault or 1984 would be like good companions to the School for Good Mothers, but you don't have to know anything about them to like this book, to understand this book, to respond to this book. And I want to emphasize that. So that is all from me. Thank you so much for watching this video. Keep reading, and when you're not, follow me on all my social media, link down below, and I will be seeing you next video. Bye.